just like other countries, the countries in Scandinavia has a lot of different traditions the year around. And since we share such close history, a lot of the traditions are very similar up here in the north. One thing we share during February is the tradition to eat a special sweet bun with fillings in it. It has different names in different countries. The most common name in Sweden is the name semla, or Fastlagsbulle. The word semla probably comes from the Latin word simula, that means flour. Fastlagsbulle means Fat Tuesday Bun. In the southern part of Sweden, it is also called Fastlagsbulle, which is very similar to the Danish and Norwegian Fastlagsbulle, and the meaning is Shrove Tuesday Bun. Semla in Finnish means something completely different in many areas of Finland. There it's wheat savory bread. So in Finland they say laskiaispulla. There the word comes from laskiainen, which basically means going downhill, and that is a very old tradition in Finland where the children and youth would go sledding to determine how crop would be in the coming year. Those who slid the furthest were going to get the best crop. The tradition of Lent is from when we all were Catholics, and most of the Christian countries had some kind of feast the last 3 days before Lent, starting on a Sunday and ending on a Tuesday, because the Lent always started on a Wednesday. When we became Protestants, there was less focus on the Lent, but that didn't stop the Scandinavian people to continue to have a feast and gorge themselves with Lent buns. It's a bit funny how things like this lives on up here in the north. Neither countries in Scandinavia is particularly religious, and we haven't been Catholics since the early 16th century. But I think we can conclude that we Scandinavian people like our traditions, and when we start doing something, the how is more important than the why, and if there is alcohol or food involved, we will find a reason if we have to. Today, no one in Scandinavia is eating these buns to celebrate the start of Lent or the end of Christmas. We eat them because that is what we are used to and because they are truly tasty. The traditions are important, even if we don't always reflect on why we do things. There will always be some Swede that is very, very upset that the bakeries and the grocery stores start selling semla buns in November or December, because not before Christmas. And some, at least here in Sweden, do not touch the buns until Shrove Tuesday. These are not people that are religious and want to respect Lent. These are just people that have a strong opinion on the name Shrove Tuesday Bun, and thus think it's important to stick to our traditions. But after Shrove Tuesday has been, they will be probably very happy to eat until whipped cream come out of their ears for at least a month or so, which goes completely against the original idea of Lent. Again, the how is more important than the why. So after all this talk about this bun, what is it? Well, it differs a bit between the Scandinavian countries. In Norway and Denmark, it is a sweet wheat bun where you take out the inside of the bun and fill it with jam or vanilla custard and top it with whipped cream. In Denmark, they put chocolate on the lid, and they even have an open version without the lid, and they also use puff pastry instead of the wheat dough. Iceland also fill it with jam and cream, and there it is sometimes baked with a petit bun. In Sweden this is filled with a mix of the bun that you take away to make a hole, a splash of cream and almond paste, and then you top it with whipped cream. And both Norway and Sweden use a sweet wheat bun seasoned with cardamom. Finland do both the Norwegian jam version, usually raspberry, and the Swedish almond paste version. There is a bit of a war between the countries on which version is the correct version, and sadly, I have to admit that Sweden is vastly outnumbered in our opinion that it should be almond paste, not jam or custard. But for me as a Swede, of course the other countries are doing it wrong. So I thought I should show you how to do it the Swedish way, so that the right way is spread through the rest of the world. You will be able to find the recipe I use on my very forgotten and badly kept WordPress blog. I will put the link in the description below for you. So let's start baking. And what you will need is butter. And please use real butter. That is the thing to make this really tasty. We need sugar, we need milk, some salt,
ground up cardamom, 2 eggs.
In the recipe on my blog, it says fresh yeast. That is the best thing to use, but I didn't have any at home for this video, so I use dry yeast. Use whatever yeast you have and make sure you check the right temperature on the milk and butter for your type of yeast. For the dry yeast I am using, you want the milk to be a little hotter than for the fresh yeast. I don't own a thermometer, so yeah, that's because my cat chewed up the cord for the one I had. So I just used my finger and feel it. This is how I usually bake. So I'm sorry if I seem a little bit like I'm just slapping things together on a whim. I am like one of those really annoying medieval cookbooks where you only get ingredients and know a certain amount of how much you are supposed to use. This is how my mom taught me. Just use enough, she said. What enough was, well, you had to figure it out by your own. But you will find actual measurements in the recipe on my blog.
So now what I have done is I have warmed the milk and the butter in the microwave. If you don't have a microwave, you can do it on the stove. And the important thing here is to not get it too hot. And also don't get cat hair in it. It's okay if the butter is still in chunks, it doesn't have to melt the butter. Actually, it's better if you don't melt the butter, but doing it this way will soften up the butter so it's easier to mix later. So now, since I don't have something to measure the heat with, sorry for my bad English, I'm just gonna go, it's nice and toasty. You want to have it warm enough so you want to kind of go in and have a little bath in it.
Now mix the yeast into a bowl with milk, sugar, salt, butter, cardamom and egg. Then add a little flour at a time and work together to form a smooth dough. You can do this in a stand mixer, but I don't own one, so I have to do it the hard way. That means taking out my trusty wooden spoon and work the dough until it's firm enough so I can continue to knead it on my working surface. Now kneading is key here. You want to work up the gluten in the dough, so knead it for a couple of minutes at least. While baking, let's talk a little bit more about the history of this bun. Making Lenten buns has a very old tradition, and this little bun probably goes back to the sort of buns we can find in a painting in a Danish church that is dated 1250. There is mention in a Swedish Bible from 1541 of semlokakor that is baked as a sort of thank offerings, and in Denmark during the 16th century it seemed to have been special simlebagare, semlabun bakers. It started to get its more modern shape during the 17th century, and then you didn't have whipped cream on top, but instead you ate it with warm milk. Some people still eat it this way, and then it is called hetvägg, which is probably a Swedification of the German word heißwecke, that means warm veggies. The shape of the bun was still probably made in the shape of veggies back then, and we still cut the lid in a traditional veg shape. During the 19th century, we Swedes started to use almond paste because it was easier than doing it the hard way with grated almond and sugar, but we still mixed it with the inside of the bun and a splash of cream. At the end of the 19th century, we started to put cream on top of it, making it a mighty calorie bomb, and after the Second World War, when food rationing was lifted again, the version with whipped cream was here to stay. When the rest of Scandinavia started to wrongly put jam in it, that is hidden in mystery for me. And if you know this, please let me know in the comments below. But I guess that it could have actually been like that before we started to use almonds during the 17th century in Sweden. Jam has always existed and it is tasty. Oh, I can hear my fellow Swedes gasping and I probably just lost my citizenship for this. But yes, I actually find the jam version very tasty. It is not a semla for me, but it is tasty. And a good way to make them, if you have someone in your company that has an almond allergy, is of course with jam and custard. Fun stories around this bun. There is a myth that the Swedish king Adolf Fredrik, that died on Shrove Tuesday 1771, actually died because he ate too much of these buns. Historians today say that he died from either a stroke or burst ulcer, And while the buns might have something to do with it, he also ate sauerkraut, lobster, meat and turnips, caviar, and he drank a huge amount of champagne during this day. So the buns was probably not the only thing that killed him. A fun little tradition from the southern part of Sweden that we have nowadays stopped with was to use these buns as a way of flirting. The farmhands would give the maidens Lenten buns, sometimes with saffron and raisin in it. And if she was interested, she answered by giving him a number of eggs during Easter after Lent was had. So this little bun is responsible for many marriages. In Iceland, there is a tradition that they might still do, but is slowly dying. On Iceland, it is more common to eat the buns during Monday instead of Tuesday, and the kids would decorate sticks, and then they sneak up early in the morning and whip the adults with it and scream bolla bolla bolla, which means bun bun bun. If they manage to do this, they get as many buns as they managed to make strokes before the adult was clearly awake. I cannot for the life of me understand why this tradition hasn't spread and why this tradition is dying. I mean, for me, that doesn't have kids, it sounds hilarious. When you feel that you have this smooth dough and you have been working it good and hard, allow the dough to rise in a bowl under a cloth until almost doubled in size. This can take anything from 1 hour to 2 hours, so put the timer on 1 hour and then check if it needs a little bit more time. Now it looks as it should. Those finger markings are me degassing the dough before starting to work it into buns. Put the dough onto a lightly floured table and divide the dough into pieces, as big as you like them, and shape them into round buns. A trick I learned from John Kirkwoods' cooking channel here on YouTube is to fold the buns so you work up a good tension of the gluten on the surface. That's how you make them poof up high and not just grow out to the sides. John is a retired cook from the North East England, and his channel has helped me enormously in my baking techniques, so warmly recommend it. I'll put the link down below and also in the right corner. Now after you had made your buns and placed the buns on a baking tray with baking paper, it is time for the second proofing. Proof the buns under a cloth for about 30 to 45 minutes and then brush the buns with a lightly beaten egg. The egg is to make them shiny and add color to them. Preheat the oven to 220 degrees Celsius or 428 degrees Fahrenheit. If you know your oven is a bit hot, lower the temperature a bit to around 200 Celsius or 390 Fahrenheit. Bake them in the oven for 12 minutes until they are golden and take them out of the oven and allow them to cool without a cloth. Now for the assembly of the buns. Cut off the tops of the buns and scoop out the guts. You want big holes because you want a lot of filling. Stir the guts creamy with grated almond paste, sugar and a dash of cream. You can also use milk. The amount of bun versus almond paste is usually about 50-50 and the amount of sugar is according to taste. So take a little at first and then add some more if you want it sweeter. The filling should be sweet and marzipan tasting, but not super sweet and also not too dry. But beware of making the filling too loose and runny, then you have trouble eating it. Fill the semla buns with the filling, pipe the cream over and put the lid on. Dust it with icing sugar and ta-da! You get your semla. Eat them with care, they are dangerously tasty. And you eat them like this.